POSTCAST, your instant game reaction for the Atlanta Hawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's quick hitting local insight after every game you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra. Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. The Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So the goal is to stack wins. We'll have to give you our takes on why the Hawks are stacking, but in the opposite direction. And we'll tell you the turning point in the Hawks' eventual 138-116 loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. And DeShaun, you said for you, the Hawks' DNA did not deliver today.
It didn't, Tenitra, and that was exactly what they needed, considering that they were without a couple guys. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I've got it here on my handy-dandy notebook, believe it or not. Once I saw the size that Minnesota was going to be putting out there between, Randall and Reed and Gobert, and it's not like Ant-Man is like a small fry or anything like that either. Right. So I just really think that they needed to be hitting on some of those big time shots, some of the floor spacing, creating some of those 3-point opportunities, letting it fly, if you will, and shooting it with some confidence, considering the fact that there was like a clear size disadvantage. And we know that they weren't going to win the rebounding battle. I don't care if Onyeka Okongwu was back or not. I don't care if Kristaps Porzingis had came back and had played every minute of that game. Wasn't going to make a difference. It wasn't going to make a difference. The advantage, it was just too much of a mismatch. And it kind of appeared that I think we beat Minnesota on New Year's Eve or something. I think was that last meeting. Seems like they had that on their mind and kind of have remembered that. But certainly from a rebounding standpoint, Atlanta definitely need to get to all the scrappy ones, the long ones that hit the ground, things like that, where those little quick guards can get to them and start, transition offense. They weren't able to do any of that either, let alone not be able to make those 3-point shots. 31% from the field. I'm sorry, from three for the Hawks. And that just pretty much was a disaster. CJ McCollum looked like the only thing out there that really wanted to play some basketball, especially in the first quarter, and he didn't have a whole lot of help. Nice to see Nickeil Alexander-Walker get back out there against his former team again in the Target Center, and he was caught for some little knick-knack fouls here and there that I was a little bit surprised that the whistles were blown for those, but whenever you have Asa Newell 1 for 5 from 3, Zachary Risachet, who they've been desperately needing, 1 for 9 from 3, and just not great shooting for Corey Kispert, 33%. Some of the guys that they've been relying upon need to rely upon a little bit more. We know that this is a team that's kind of the roster is being constructively built based off of guys that can hit 3-point shots, try to stay in the game, and beat the opposing team by having a bigger number at the end of the game than the opponent. That wasn't the case on tonight, and if they want to be able to do that, they're going to have to start making some more of those threes.
Yeah, and like you said, with Minnesota, they were on a mission. New Year's Eve, they got smoked, 126-102 from the Hawks. So this was a little payback at home, and the Hawks had to know that Minnesota was going to be up for it. And they've been playing good basketball, too. They've been playing better basketball all through the month of January and now into February. But I'll say as well, I think that you mentioned something about spacing. And a lot of times when spacing is an issue and ball movement is an issue, it's very, very obvious. So when you look at the fact that you saw more of the spacing, you saw more of the ball movement with the Wolves, that's why you see them with 36 assists. It's uncharacteristic for the Hawks to have a night of just 20 dimes.
Yeah.
That tells you that ball wasn't moving. That's not winning basketball. And it certainly is not the formula for winning with the Hawks. And as you mentioned, a couple nights ago, although the Hawks lost that game, Zachary Risachet actually got the ball in the basket from 3. And it was encouraging because he hit a couple shots. You're like, okay, maybe there's going to be a return there. And the Hawks overall did not have a bad night from 3. It's just the Hornets had a daggone better night from 3. But tonight was just, you had a bad night. Like nobody was really able to get it done from three, with the exception of CJ McCollum, which he did most of his damage early. And then, as you mentioned, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, CJ 5 of 9. Nickeil Alexander-Walker 4 of 9. So you can't get that done when you have you have a 10-man rotation. Yeah. Two guys give you something to work with from the perimeter. But the other team, on the other hand, when you look down the box score for the Wolves, you can see they didn't have the greatest of games, but they had enough, because at least they were closing in on 40% from three to kind of offset what they weren't able to do at the free throw line. And again, they got what they needed in the paint. So that was something that helped to offset them just shooting 38% from three. But I tell you, my take, speaking of points in the paint, I felt like this was a game where you saw all the warts without Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson covers up, as the Bible would say, a multitude of sins and infractions that the Hawks have night in, night out. When you don't have that guy, it's very, very obvious. And of course, Dyson Daniels did not play tonight as well. And he, of course, had been struggling offensively, but maybe that would have been one more guy, like you said, when those loose balls came back, and you're trying to be under the basket. And Quinn Snyder had actually spoken about this like a month ago. How can this team improve on their team rebounding? And one of the things he said was everybody needs to crash to the ball. It's obvious when there's a long rebound what's going to happen, but what can we do for some of those short rebounds? That's where you get your scrappy little guards in, and they're supposed to get that done. And you saw without Dyson Daniels, Hawks weren't really able to get that done. They only got one rebound from CJ McCollum, despite the 38 points, one rebound. So you really missed out on his defense. But again, going back to no Jalen Johnson, Asa Newell has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, he does.
To be able to get in the starting lineup and produce. So the wart from him, like, okay, we can see there still might be an opportunity to send him down to College Park, because there are still some fundamental things that he has to get right on his defensive side, especially if his three ball is not falling. And he only took 2 attempts from three in 25 minutes. That's a challenge too. You got to give somewhere. Zachary Reese-Sachet, like I said, a couple nights ago, you were kind of sort of encouraged. But again, Jalen Johnson has been especially hiding some of the woes and the warts of that front court, right? And so at least with Onyeka Okongwu, normally you'll get it out of him, but he's probably not 100%. Like we all know, you have a dental issue. That stuff bothers you when you're just walking along in your house, afraid you're going to hit something. Try playing a basketball game, especially what happened with Diabate in the game a couple nights ago, where you could see he was kind of fiddling and trying to bother Carmelo. But yeah, I just felt like from the rebounding to even the assists, because we've been talking about Jalen Johnson being a walking triple-double. Even the assist, you missed out on him because, again, Asa Newell, Zachary Reese-Sachet, Onyeka Okongwu combined for 5 assists and 13 rebounds. Not having Jalen Johnson there, that's when you see all the warts.
You really do, and I think that something else that they really needed some help on tonight, as the guards for Minnesota were really getting kind of busy tonight. Looking back at the box score, you had, Ayo Dosunmu, who's probably played his second, maybe his third game in a Timberwolves uniform. He ends up with 21. I think his average is about 15. So he was getting busy. Bones Highland with about 13. He went 5 for 7, hit 3 threes against the team. And the Hawks just really didn't do nearly enough from its bench standpoint, knowing that you didn't have Jalen, knowing that you didn't have Dyson, shooting 3 for 15 from 3. didn't help already, bad enough as it was that the starters weren't playing very well and shooting it from three either. So first career start for Asa Newell, at least getting a chance to see what that looks like in the event that you're in a crunch situation and absolutely need him. Minnesota was really hungry, losing two of his last three or three of his last four. And then Corey Kispert being a guy that, we really expected to been able to hang our hat and relying upon him in the last 6 games, 15 points a game, 53% from the field, 43% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. Didn't give nearly as much anything remotely close to that on tonight. It should be really, really interesting to see the way that things kind of unfold going forward over the course of the next couple of weeks, not only to see how we finish before the All-Star break, but certainly how we'll come out of it.
Indeed. And one more thing, you know who else failed tonight? The scouting team, because Ayo Dosunmu has been torching the Hawks
forever.
His days with right. I can't think of a time when that guy did not go on the Hawks. So I'm like, scouting team, you guys kind of missed the mark on that one, because maybe even above him, maybe only second to Anthony Edwards. He's a guy who I would have been looking out for.
Good point.
Yeah, because we know, we've seen it. It's always been ugly. You know what else was ugly? Another one of those runs that deaded the Hawks in the second quarter. We'll talk about that turning point up next. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every diamond, every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex pay. So you've got options while the games are still happening. So you might download the app and be surprised how easy it is to get started. It'll take just a couple minutes to build your first lineup. And it's available in all 50 states, so it's easy for just about anyone to jump in. Download that Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're looking at the events that only you get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, and that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches, well, they might start slow, but somehow it gets intense really fast. Speed skating races can be decided by inches, and FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. So the Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Hiring isn't just about finding someone who's willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. Now, that's what you're going to like about Indeed, the fact that you can get specific and target exactly what you need, and it saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it right away with Indeed. Oh, DeShaun, another night, another run. The Hawks let the Timberwolves go off, and the game got away late in the second quarter, and that was the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
And DeShaun, there were moments in this game where the Hawks definitely did some things that were shaky, and you kind of saw a foreboding of what was going to happen in the second quarter because they gave up 18 points in less than 5 minutes to start the game. That's the same way they started that game against Charlotte. And then you saw them close. They closed in towards halftime, but then there was a run. And that's one of the things where it typically is going to be just like it was tonight, a 14-0 run. Again, a short stretch of time from like the 4:36 mark in the second quarter to about the 1:42 mark in the second quarter. And typically speaking, the Hawks just do not bounce back from that. We obviously know that they didn't have a lot of offensive firepower. The threes weren't going down. But again, their defense didn't get stops to at least stop the bleeding until maybe their offense could catch up. And that's pretty much your game.
It was. And that's where it just kind of appeared that the talent was taking over.
Yeah.
Just the reminder of New Year's Eve was taking over.
Yes.
The reminder that they, are on, winning, I think lost 75% of its last 4 games was taken over. Anthony Edwards taking over, the strength, the size, all of those different things.
Yeah.
I can recall back to where it actually had first began. That was on the Zachary Reese, one of the more impressive things that he did on tonight. And one dunk on an assist by Nickeil Alexander-Walker with around like close to almost 7 minutes, late 6-minute mark in the second quarter. And that had the game at like 54-48. And from that point, Minnesota went on an 11-2 run. Following that up when I thought it couldn't get much worse because I'm like, okay, the Hawks are going to find a way to kind of keep it close. Or it looked like many times Minnesota had been trying to pull away, but Atlanta was just finding a way to, answer back. Even if it was a Minnesota 3, Atlanta was coming back with a 2. They just happened to be working a lot harder for their 2s than Minnesota's 3s. And that's kind of what did them in. But ultimately, even like I said, following that up after that 2-minute stretch, a 14-0 run by Minnesota, that ended up putting them up by 20. Ayo Dosunmu had started coming in looking like he's been playing with them all season, not just the last few games. Anthony Edwards was kind of flexing his muscles, doing Anthony Edwards type things. And even Jaden McDaniels was coming through on some tomahawk dunks, and they were getting out in transition on things that while Atlanta's perimeter defense, yes, they are a top 5 defensive team by rankings standards, but just clearly we're not getting back and looking like they were outmatched. I knew at that point, after going up by 20, they weren't going to be able to, find a way to claw themselves back into this game to even make it respectable. It might look like it at the end. They ended up bringing it back to within like 14 or 15 points, something like that. But even that was being very generous after Minnesota had put a lot of its, second and third string players in.
Right. Real quick, the Hawks got something out of Jock Landale again tonight with the 12 points and the 6 rebounds. Good stuff from one of the newer Hawks. But real quick, Gabe Vincent, 2 points, just 2 points in 19 minutes, but he Hield, no points in 5 minutes. But what do you think they could possibly bring to the table maybe once they get up and running and get that chemistry going with the other players and get to know a little bit more about how Quinn Snyder calls a game?
Well, Buddy Hield, some 3-point shooting. We talked about the DNA of this team that didn't deliver today. He should be able to add to some of that. Obviously, you don't have Luke Kennard anymore. So he just, you talk about prolific 3-point shooters, guys who are like snipers and riflemen and all of those things. He's one of those. But when he's hot, he's hot. When he's not, he's not. Still got a lot to learn under this system. It's going to take him more than just this year to kind of get acclimated, but they could have used it tonight. As far as Gabe Vincent goes, he's a guy that he's a ball hawk. He's a really good defender, and he knows how to run a team. Is he the greatest talent in the world? Absolutely not. But when you need somebody to kind of take the pressure off of Jalen Johnson playing that point guard role all the time that we've kind of gotten used to, he can kind of help contribute to a good little bit of that and at least just kind of be like a extension of the coach on the floor, or I guess just kind of like a game manager to a degree.
Yeah, and maybe those players coupled with the fact that Charlotte won't have some players. Maybe the Hawks are going to a reprieve in Charlotte in a couple nights, because apparently your home team and the Charlotte Hornets,
of course, they're the ones.
A little tussle tonight.
Yeah, of course, the Pistons had to be the ones. Who else did you expect? And I think that that's something that they've been kind of constantly doing, is why they have been at the top of the NBA and probably getting everybody's best shot this time around, going from being the hunter to the hunted. They're embracing all of that. They've built this team kind of based on their the culture of what Detroit typically is, what we have known them to be since the beginning of time. But it was a little bit of a tussle. I'm not used to seeing Diabate, who went to Michigan, Miles Bridges, who went to Michigan State, kind of teaming up amongst one another, going against Duren and Big Beef Stew. But when Isaiah Stewart starts trying to move some furniture around, it can get real ugly and look like another Malice. So we might be about to. I wouldn't anticipate, of course, we'll wait on the ruling from the league. I wouldn't anticipate that Charlotte's going to have Diabate, nor he or Miles Bridges when Wednesday's game rolls around, in a critical, pivotal game for the Atlanta Hawks as well.
Yeah, because the Hawks have to at least get that game, because we know how tight the standings are in the play-in, and very tight between the Hawks and the Hornets. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game, and is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.